Admiral Park, Jisoo stood alone on the bridge of the warship Remembrance. The stars outside the window looked the same as they always did. Cold, distant, silent. But today was different. Today, for the first time in 3,000 years, humanity was about to leave home. She was 53 years old. Her hair was gray at the temples, and her face carried the weight of command. Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They were nervous. She could feel it. Every person on this ship knew what this moment meant. 3,000 years ago, visitors came to Earth. They called themselves the Galactic Compact. They were beautiful and terrible. Some looked like birds made of light. Others moved like water given form. They came with gifts. Medicine that cured diseases. Technology that seemed like magic. They promised to lift humanity up, to make them part of something greater. But then they changed their minds. Jisoo had read the old records 1,000 times. The Compact had watched humanity for 50 years. They studied human history. They saw the wars, the violence, the way humans treated each other. And they became afraid. Too dangerous, they said. Too unstable. Too much like the ones who came before. They never explained what that meant. They simply left. But before they did, they built a barrier around Earth's solar system. An energy wall that blocked all faster than light travel. Humanity could still reach their own planets, Mars, the moons of Jupiter. But the stars were closed to them forever. The Compact told the rest of the galaxy that humanity was a failed experiment. A mistake. They said Earth should be forgotten. And for 3,000 years, it was. Lieutenant Kang Do-yoon walked onto the bridge and saluted. He was young, maybe 28, with sharp eyes and a serious face. Jisoo had watched him rise through the ranks faster than anyone in the fleet. He was brilliant. He was also angry. She could see it in the way he stood, the way he looked at the stars. "Admiral," he said, "engineering reports the drive is ready. We can attempt the crossing whenever you give the order." Jisoo nodded slowly. "How do you feel, Lieutenant?" Do-hyun hesitated. It was not a question admirals usually asked. "I feel ready, ma'am." "That's not what I asked." He was quiet for a moment. Then his jaw tightened. "My grandmother used to tell me stories." Her grandmother told her. And her grandmother before that. All the way back to the abandonment. We passed down the memory like a disease. The day the sky closed. The day they told us we weren't good enough. Jisoo turned to look at him. "And now?" "Now, I want to see what's out there. I want them to see us. I want them to know we didn't die." She understood. Every human alive carried some version of that feeling. The weight of being forgotten. The burning need to prove they had survived. "Take your station," she said. "We launch in 10 minutes." The barrier had fallen 6 months ago. Not because the Compact removed it. They had probably forgotten it existed. No, the barrier fell because human scientists spent 3,000 years trying to break it. Generation after generation. Failure after failure. Parents teaching children, who taught their children, who taught theirs. Never giving up. Never accepting the prison they had been placed in. Dr. Shin Yoonji had been the one to finally crack it. A medical doctor, of all things. She had been studying the energy patterns of the barrier when she noticed something everyone else had missed. The barrier wasn't a wall. It was a lock. And like all locks, it had a key. It took her team 2 years to build that key. When they activated it, the barrier didn't fall dramatically. It simply turned off. One moment it was there. The next, the stars were open. Jisoo remembered the silence that followed. The whole world had watched. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. They all just stood there, staring at the sky, not quite believing it was real. Now, 6 months later, the Remembrance was ready. It was not the largest ship humanity had ever built, but it was the most advanced. Weapon systems that had been designed and redesigned for centuries. Engines based on stolen compact technology, improved and perfected by human engineers who had nothing to do but dream of the stars. Admiral called out Specialist Choi Myre from her station. She was young too, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She was the ship's xenobiologist, trained to study alien life. Nobody knew if there would be anything left to study. We're receiving something strange. A signal from beyond the barrier point. Jisoo frowned. What kind of signal? It's a distress call, ma'am. Repeating on multiple frequencies. The language is unknown, but the pattern is clear. Someone is asking for help. The bridge went silent. 3,000 years of isolation. 3,000 years of silence. And now, at this exact moment, someone was calling out. Can you determine the source? Jisoo asked. Working on it. Marie's fingers flew across her console. It's coming from approximately 40 light years away. A system called Rethani Prime in the old compact records. Do-hyun stepped forward. Ma'am, this could be a trap. The compact might know the barrier is down. They might be testing us. The compact abandoned us 3,000 years ago, Jisoo said quietly. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it then. Then who is calling for help? That was the question. Jisoo stared at the stars through the window. For 3,000 years, humanity had wondered what was happening in the galaxy. Were the aliens who abandoned them still there? Were they watching? Did they ever think about the people they left behind? Now they had a chance to find out. Set course for Rethani Prime, Jisoo ordered. Ma'am? Do-hyun looked surprised. Our mission was exploration, mapping the nearby systems. We weren't supposed to. Our mission is to represent humanity. Jisoo cut him off. For 3,000 years, we were alone. Nobody came when we suffered. Nobody helped when we struggled. We had to save ourselves, again and again. She turned to face her crew. I won't make the same choice they did. Someone is asking for help. We're going to answer. The crew exchanged looks. Then, one by one, they nodded. Myre began plotting the course. Do-hyun returned to his station. The engines of the Remembrance hummed with power as the ship turned toward the unknown. Jisoo remained at the window, watching the stars slide past. She thought about her own grandmother, who had died when Jisoo was just a child. The old woman used to sing a song about the night the barrier fell. Not the real night, but the imagined one. The night humans finally broke free. We will not forget, the song went. We will not forgive. But we will become something better than those who hurt us. Jisoo had never understood that song until now. Forgetting was easy. Forgiving was harder. But becoming something better? That was the real challenge. The Remembrance jumped to faster than light speed. The stars stretched into lines of light, then disappeared entirely. For a moment, there was nothing but silence and darkness. Then they emerged on the other side. And everything changed. The first thing Jisoo saw was fire. Ships burning in the void. Debris floating in clouds so thick it looked like a metal storm. And beyond it all, a planet wrapped in smoke and ash. Someone had brought war to the stars. My God, Myre whispered. Do-hyun gripped his console. Admiral, what happened here? Jisoo did not answer. She couldn't. She just stared at the destruction before her and felt something cold settle in her chest. They had come looking for the galaxy, then abandoned them. But the galaxy they found was dying, and humanity had a choice to make. The space station was dying. Smoke filled its hallways. Emergency lights flickered red and orange. Bodies lay in the corridors, some alien, some too burned to recognize. Captain Yoon Hajin led his team through the wreckage, weapon raised, heart pounding. He was 40 years old, built like a soldier, with scars on his hands from decades of training. He had spent his whole life preparing for war. Every human soldier had. They didn't know who the enemy would be, but they knew one would come eventually. The galaxy had abandoned them once. It could attack them just as easily. But Hajin had never imagined anything like this. Movement ahead, called Sergeant Nam Ji-woo, a small woman with quick reflexes and sharper eyes. She pointed down a corridor filled with smoke. Hajin held up his fist. The team stopped. They listened. Crying. Someone was crying. "Hold formation," Hajin whispered. "I'll check it out." He moved forward alone, stepping over debris and broken glass. The smoke cleared slightly, and he saw them. Aliens, dozens of them, huddled in what looked like a medical bay. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Some were injured. Others held children close to their chests. They saw Hajin and screamed. He immediately lowered his weapon. "Easy, easy. I'm not here to hurt you." They didn't understand his words. Of course they didn't. But they understood his tone, his body language, the way he put his hands up and stepped back. Slowly, the screaming stopped. Fear remained, but it was mixed with confusion now. Hajin touched his communicator. "Admiral, I found survivors. Alien civilians. They need medical attention." Admiral Park Jisu's voice came through clearly. "Understood. Dr. Shin is on her way with a medical team. Secure the area and keep them calm." Keep them calm. Hajin almost laughed. He was a human. His species had been locked away for 3,000 years. These aliens had probably never seen anything like him. And yet here he was, trying to comfort them. One of the aliens stepped forward. She was older than the others, with silver patterns on her blue skin that might have been age marks or decorations. She studied Hajin with those large dark eyes, then spoke in a language that sounded like music. His translator implant struggled for a moment, then caught up. "Double quotes, impossible. You should not exist. You are." "Human," Hajin said. "From Earth." The alien's eyes went wide. "The forgotten ones." That word again. Forgotten. Hajin felt the familiar burn of anger in his chest, but he pushed it down. "Yes, we were forgotten, but we're here now. What happened to your people?" The alien, who introduced herself as Counselor Tala, told him everything. The Galactic Compact had fallen. It collapsed nearly 500 years ago, torn apart by internal conflicts and corruption. When it fell, something worse rose in its place. The Veth Dominion. Tala described them with terror in her voice. The Veth were insectoid creatures, tall and armored, with minds built for conquest. They had been a small empire once, kept in check by the Compact. But when the Compact fell, the Veth spread like fire. They conquered world after world, species after species. Those who surrendered became slaves. Those who resisted were destroyed. "They are coming here," Tala said. "Rathani Prime was our last refuge. But their fleet found us. They burned our ships. They are landing soldiers on the planet now. Soon, everything will be gone." Hajin listened in silence. He thought about Earth, about the 3,000 years his people had spent alone, building and learning and waiting. They had faced plagues, wars, disasters of every kind. But they had always survived. Now, standing in this broken station, surrounded by dying aliens, he understood something important. Earth's suffering had been lonely. Earth's suffering had been lonely, but it had also been safe. The barrier that locked them in had also kept the Veth out. "Why did the Compact abandon us?" he asked suddenly. The real reason. Tala's face twisted with something that might have been shame. because you reminded them of the Veth, your violence, your aggression. They feared you would become conquerors like them. They thought it was better to lock you away than risk the galaxy. Hedgen said nothing for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. They weren't entirely wrong. Tala looked surprised. Humans can be violent, Hedgen continued. We can be cruel. We've done terrible things to each other throughout our history. But that's not all we are. We're also stubborn. We protect our own. And sometimes, we choose to be better than we were. The sound of footsteps made them both turn. Dr. Shin Yoonji arrived with her medical team, carrying supplies and equipment. She was the same scientist who had broken the barrier, but she had trained as a doctor first. When she saw the wounded aliens, she didn't hesitate. She immediately began treating them. These injuries are severe, she muttered, examining a young Rathani who had burns across half his body. I'll need to adapt our medicines for their biology. Counselor, can you tell me about your people's physiology? Tala stared at her in disbelief. You would help us? After what the compact did to your people? Yoonji didn't look up from her patient. The compact hurt us. You didn't. You're not responsible for what your ancestors decided 3,000 years ago. Now hold this bandage here and press firmly. Tala obeyed automatically, still looking stunned. Back on the Remembrance, Admiral Park Jisoo listened to Hajin's report. The bridge was quiet. Everyone was processing what they had learned. The galaxy they had dreamed of reaching was burning. The civilization that had abandoned them was dead, and an empire of conquerors was spreading across the stars like a plague. Admiral, Lieutenant Kang Doyin said quietly, we should consider our options. The barrier is still open. We could return to Earth, seal it again, and protect our own people. Let the Veth have the galaxy. Jisoo turned to look at him. Is that what you want? Aye. Doyin hesitated. His hands were shaking slightly. I don't know. I spent my whole life angry at the galaxy, angry at the compact for abandoning us. Part of me thinks they deserve what's happening to them. And the other part? Doyun looked down. The other part keeps thinking about those refugees on the station. The children. They didn't choose any of this. They're just scared. Specialist Choi Mai-Ray spoke up from her station. Admiral, I've completed my analysis of the Veth. Based on the records Counselor Tala provided, their empire spans over 200 star systems. They have thousands of warships, billions of soldiers. She paused. We have 47 ships, 10,000 soldiers. If we fight them, we will lose. Probably, Jisoo agreed. Then, why are we even considering it? Jisoo walked to the window. Below them, the planet of Rethani Prime burned. She could see the flashes of weapons fire on the surface. The Veth were killing everyone they could find. 3,000 years ago, she said slowly, our ancestors screamed for help. They begged the compact to stay. They promised to change, to be better. And the compact turned their backs and walked away. She turned to face her crew. I remember how that felt. Every human remembers. We carry it in our blood, in our stories, in the anger we can't quite let go of. She straightened her shoulders. I won't do that to someone else. I won't look at those refugees, at those children, and tell them they're not worth saving. I won't become the thing I hated. The bridge was silent. Then Hajin's voice came through the communicator. Admiral, Counselor Tala wants to speak with you directly. She's asking about something. I think she wants to know if we're going to help them fight. Jisoo closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her grandmother's song. We will not forget. We will not forgive. But we will become something better than those who hurt us. She opened her eyes. Tell her yes. Tell her humanity is going to war. Do-hyun let out a long breath. Then he stood up straighter. What are your orders, Admiral? Contact Earth. Tell them to send everything we have. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. The galaxy forgot us for 3,000 years. Jisu's voice was hard as steel. It's time they remembered. The Battle of Rithani Prime began at dawn. Or what passed for dawn on a world covered in smoke and fire. Lieutenant Kang Do-hyun stood in the landing craft with 40 soldiers. They were dropping toward the planet's surface, toward the heaviest fighting. The Veth had landed thousands of troops. The Rithani defenders were being pushed back. Without reinforcement, they would be dead within hours. "Listen up," Do-hyun said, his voice cutting through the noise of the engines. "The enemy doesn't know what we are. They've never fought humans before. That's our advantage. They think they know war. They think they know violence." He checked his weapon one last time. "They're wrong." The soldiers around him nodded. They were young, most of them. This was their first real battle. But they had trained for this their entire lives. Every human had. 3,000 years of preparing for the day they would finally face the galaxy. The landing craft hit ground hard. The doors blew open, and Do-hyun led the charge. The Veth were exactly as Counselor Tala had described. Tall, armored, insectoid. They moved with terrifying speed, their weapons firing beams of superheated plasma. But they were also surprised. They had expected Rithani defenders. They got humans instead. Do-hyun shot the first Veth he saw, then the second, then the third. His soldiers spread out, taking cover, returning fire with precision and discipline. The Veth fell back, confused. This was not how battles were supposed to go. Above them, in space, the real fight was happening. Admiral Park Jisu watched from the bridge of the Remembrance as her fleet engaged the Veth Armada. The enemy had 60 ships to humanity's 47. They were larger, heavier, more powerful. But they were also slow. "All ships, execute pattern Gamma 7, Jisu ordered. "Focus fire on their engine sections." The human fleet moved like dancers. Small, fast, coordinated. They had spent 3,000 years studying the Compact's old records, learning everything they could about galactic warfare. Then they had improved on it, made it faster, made it deadlier. The first Veth cruiser exploded. Then another. Then another. On the surface, Captain Yoon Hajin led a second force toward the Veth command post. Intelligence said their general was there, directing the ground assault. If they could take him out, the Veth soldiers might fall into chaos. "Contact ahead," Sergeant Nam Ji-woo reported. Heavy resistance. Hajin could see them. A full battalion of Veth dug in around a fortified building. This was going to be bloody. "Suggestions?" he asked. Engineer Baek Sung-woo stepped forward. He was not a soldier, not really. He was a builder, a maker of things. But he had insisted on coming to the surface. "Give me 10 minutes, he said. "I can rig something. You have 5. Sung-woo grinned and went to work. He had been studying Veth technology since the Remembrance first arrived. Their weapons were powerful, but they had a weakness. They ran on a specific energy frequency. If you could disrupt that frequency... 5 minutes later, Sun-woo held up a small device. This should knock out their weapons for about 30 seconds. It won't last long, but it might be enough. Hajin nodded. "Everyone, get ready. When their guns go down, we move fast." Sun-woo activated the device. The effect was immediate. Every Veth weapon in the area flickered and died. The aliens looked at their rifles in confusion. The humans attacked. It was brutal. Close combat, hand to hand. Humans were smaller than the Veth, but they were also meaner. 3,000 years of frustration poured out in every punch, every strike, every desperate struggle. When it was over, the Veth general was dead. His soldiers were retreating. But the cost was high. Hajin looked around at his surviving troops. They had started with 200. He counted maybe 80 still standing. Captain. Jiwoo limped over, blood running down her face. The Veth fleet is withdrawing. Admiral Park reports victory in space. Rithani Prime is secure. Victory. The word felt hollow. Hajin looked at the bodies around him, human and Veth and Rithani alike. This was what victory looked like. Back on the Remembrance, Dr. Shin Yoonji worked without rest. The medical bay was overflowing. Human wounded. Rithani wounded. Even some Veth prisoners who had surrendered. She treated them all the same. Why? One of the Veth asked her. He was young, for his species. His arm had been badly burned. Why do you help me? I am your enemy. Yoonji finished applying the bandage before answering. You were my enemy an hour ago. Right now, you're my patient. There's a difference. The Veth stared at her with his compound eyes. Your people are strange. Yes, she agreed. We are. In a quiet corner of the station, Specialist Choi Mai-rei sat with a Rithani child. The girl was maybe 5 years old, though it was hard to tell with alien ages. She had lost her parents in the attack. She had been alone when Mireille found her, hiding under a broken console. Why? The girl asked. Her translator device made her voice sound flat, but Mireille could hear the confusion underneath. Why did you come? You don't know us. Mireille thought about the question for a long time. A long time ago, my people needed help. We were in trouble, and we called out to the stars. Nobody answered. We were alone. The girl's large eyes were fixed on her. I don't ever want anyone else to feel that way, Mireille continued. So when we heard your people calling for help, we came. Because that's what we wish someone had done for us. The girl didn't say anything. She just leaned against Mireille's side and closed her eyes. On the bridge, Admiral Jisoo received a message from Counselor Tala. The Rithani leader was aboard the station, coordinating the evacuation of survivors. Admiral Park, Tala said, her musical voice heavy with emotion. I do not have words to express what your people have done. You saved us. You owe us nothing, and yet you gave us everything. We don't want thanks, Jisoo replied. We want allies. Tala was silent for a moment. The Veth will return. They always do. This defeat will make them angry. They will bring more ships, more soldiers. I know. Your people are brave, Admiral. But you are few. The Veth have conquered hundreds of worlds. How can you hope to stop them? Jisoo smiled slightly. The same way we survived 3,000 years of isolation. One day at a time. One fight at a time. One choice at a time. She turned to look out the window. The fires on Rithani Prime were slowly dying. Rescue ships were landing, picking up survivors. Human soldiers worked alongside Rithani civilians, clearing rubble and treating wounded. We weren't supposed to survive, Jisoo said quietly. The Compact locked us away and forgot about us. They expected us to die. But we didn't. We built. We learned. We grew stronger. And now we're here, doing what they couldn't. What is that? Tala asked. Fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. Jisoo turned back to face the screen. The galaxy abandoned us, Counselor. But we're not going to abandon the galaxy. That's not who we choose to be. Tala's silver-marked face showed something new. Not fear. Not gratitude. Hope. Then perhaps, she said slowly, there is hope for all of us after all. Lieutenant Do-hyun's voice came over the communicator. Admiral, ground forces are secure. We're ready for evacuation. Good work, Lieutenant. Come home, Do-hyun paused. Admiral, I think I understand now. Why you chose to fight. Oh? We spent 3,000 years angry. Angry at being abandoned. angry at being forgotten. But anger doesn't build anything. It just burns. His voice was tired but calm. What we did today, that built something. Something real. Jisoo nodded, even though he couldn't see her. That's the lesson, Lieutenant. That's what 3,000 years taught us. You can be defined by what hurt you, or you can be defined by what you choose to do next. She looked out at the stars one more time. And we chose this. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Rethani Prime. 6 months of war. Commander Otasian stood in the ruins of a city that had once been beautiful. The buildings were made of something like crystal, and they had glowed with soft light before the Veth came. Now they were shattered, broken, dark. But the people were still alive. That was what mattered. Commander, a young Rethani officer approached him. Her name was Yella, and she had lost her entire family in the first attack. Now she fought alongside humans, learning their tactics, their stubbornness, their refusal to give up. The last transport is loaded. We're ready to evacuate. Taejin nodded. Get everyone out. The Veth reinforcements will be here within the hour. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Yella looked at him with those large, dark eyes. She didn't believe him, but she also knew better than to argue with a human commander. She had learned that much in 6 months. Taejin waited until the transport lifted off. Then he turned to face the approaching darkness. The Veth were coming. He could hear the rumble of their vehicles, see the dust rising in the distance. He wasn't planning to fight them. Not today. He was planning to slow them down. The resistance had grown. What started as 47 human ships and 10,000 soldiers had become something larger. Other species had joined the fight. The Kes, a race of small but brilliant engineers. The Moradi, tall and silent, whose warriors fought with ancient blades. The Oreni, whose people had been nearly wiped out by the Veth a century ago. They called themselves the Forgotten Alliance, because every species in it had been abandoned at some point. By the Compact, by the galaxy, by fate itself. And humanity led them all. Lieutenant Bayuna worked in the intelligence center on a hidden station far from the front lines. She was small and quiet, with eyes that missed nothing. Her job was to find weaknesses, cracks in the enemy's armor. I found something, she said. Admiral Park Jisoo leaned over her shoulder. Show me. The screen filled with intercepted Veth communications. Yuna had spent months learning their language, their codes, their secrets. What she had discovered was fascinating. The Veth aren't unified, Yuna explained. Their empire is held together by fear. The High Council controls everything through intimidation. If a commander fails, they execute not just him, but his entire clan, his family, his friends, everyone who ever supported him. Jisoo's face darkened. That's evil, yes, but it's also a weakness. Yuna pulled up more data. Look at these communications. Some of their commanders are terrified. Not of us, but of their own leaders. They're starting to make mistakes, taking fewer risks, pulling back from fights they might win because they're afraid of the punishment for losing. Can we use this? Yuna smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I think we can do more than that. I think we can break them apart from the inside. Counselor Tala requested a private meeting with Admiral Jisoo. They met in a small conference room on the Remembrance. Just the two of them. I need to tell you something, Tala said. Her voice was heavy. Something about why the Compact really abandoned your people. Jisoo sat down slowly. I'm listening. We told you that we feared humans would become like the Veth. That was true. But there was more to it. Tala's hands trembled slightly. The Veth were once part of the Compact. Long ago, before your species even existed. They were our allies, our friends. We uplifted them, just as we tried to uplift you. Jisoo felt cold. What happened? They turned on us. Not immediately. It took centuries. But slowly, they changed. They became violent, territorial. They started conquering their neighbors instead of trading with them. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. They had grown too powerful to stop. Tala looked down at her hands. When we found humanity, we saw the same patterns, the same aggression, the same capacity for violence. We were terrified. We had already created one monster. We couldn't bear the thought of creating another. So you locked us away? Yes. Tears ran down Tala's blue face. We thought we were protecting the galaxy. We thought we were being wise. But we were just being cowards. We chose fear over hope. And now, she gestured at the stars outside the window. Now the monster we created is destroying everything, and the people we abandoned are the only ones fighting to stop it. Jisoo was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took Tala's hand. The compact made a mistake, she said. But so have we. Humanity has done terrible things throughout its history. We've hurt each other. We've hurt our planet. We've made choices that shamed us for generations. Tala looked up. But that's not all we are, Jisoo continued. We're also capable of change, of growth, of choosing to be better than we were. She squeezed Tala's hand gently. You weren't wrong to fear what we might become. You were wrong to assume we couldn't choose something different. And the Veth? Tala whispered. Do you think they can change too? Jisoo thought about that question for a long time. She thought about the Veth prisoners they had taken. The young soldier Dr. Shin had treated. The fear in his eyes that wasn't fear of humans, but fear of his own masters. I don't know, she admitted. But I think everyone deserves the chance to try. On the front lines, Commander Taejin had finished his delaying action. He had bought enough time for the evacuation, then slipped away through the ruins before the Veth could catch him. Now he sat in a transport, heading back to base, exhausted but alive. The soldier next to him was Morati, tall, silent, covered in ritual scars. They had fought together for 3 months and had never exchanged more than a dozen words. Why do your people fight? The Morati asked suddenly. Taejin looked at him. What do you mean? The Veth threaten our homes. The Retheni fight because they have no choice. The Kes fight because they love machines more than themselves. The Marathi's deep voice was curious, not accusing. But humans, Earth is safe. Your barrier could be rebuilt. You could return home and forget the galaxy, just as the galaxy forgot you. Why do you stay? Taejong thought about his home. His parents, still alive on Earth. His sister, who had 2 children. They were safe, protected, far from this war. Because we know what it feels like, he said finally. To be alone. To call for help and hear nothing but silence. We survived it, but it changed us. It made us understand something important. What? That nobody should have to face the darkness alone. Taejin looked out the window at the stars. We could go home. You're right. We can hide behind our barrier and pretend none of this is happening. But then we would become exactly what the Compact feared we would become. We would become people who only care about themselves. He shook his head. We didn't survive 3,000 years just to become that. We survived so we could become something better. Something worth remembering. The Marathi was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised Taejun completely. He reached out and gripped Taejun's shoulder. Among the Marathi, it was a gesture of brotherhood. Then we will fight together, the Marathi said. Until the end. Back on the Remembrance, Admiral Jisoo received a transmission from Earth. It was her daughter, Junhee, who worked in the government. Mother, Junhee said, The council has voted. They're sending everything we have. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. They're calling it Operation Remember. Jisoo smiled despite her exhaustion. Remember what? Remember who we chose to be. Junhee's voice was proud. The whole world is watching, Mother. They're scared, but they're also hopeful. For the first time in 3,000 years, we're not just surviving anymore. We're actually living. Jisoo touched the screen gently. Tell them we won't let them down. I know you won't. Junhee smiled. Come home safe, Mother. I will. I promise. The transmission ended. Jisoo sat alone on the bridge, looking out at the stars. The war was far from over. The Veth were still powerful. The alliance was still small. The odds were still terrible. But for the first time, Jisoo felt something she hadn't felt since the barrier fell. Hope. Real hope. The Veth Throne World was a planet of iron and fire. Its surface was covered with factories, fortresses, and monuments to conquest. For 500 years, it had never been attacked. The Veth High Council believed it never could be. They were wrong. Admiral Park Jisoo stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching the enemy planet grow larger in the window. Behind her, 200 ships of the Forgotten Alliance formed the largest fleet ever assembled against the Veth Dominion. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Kang Do-yoon announced. He had changed in the past year. The anger was still there, but it was quieter now. More focused. We're ready to begin the assault. Not yet. Jisoo turned to face engineer Baek Sunwoo, who stood by a strange device in the corner of the bridge. Is it ready? Sunwoo nodded. He looked nervous, but his hands were steady. Ready, Admiral. This broadcast system will reach every Veth ship and soldier in the system. They'll all hear you at the same time. Good. Jisoo took a deep breath. Open the channel. The screen in front of her flickered. Then it showed the face of the Veth Imperator. He was massive, even for his species. His armor was made of gold and bone. His compound eyes were cold as ice. Human, he said. The translator made his clicking voice sound flat. You have come to die. No. Jisoo's voice was calm. I've come to give you a choice. The Imperator made a sound that might have been laughter. You are surrounded by my fleets. Your tiny alliance cannot defeat us. There is no choice here. Only death. There's always a choice. Jisoo stepped forward. 3,000 years ago, this galaxy decided my people weren't worth saving. They locked us away and forgot we existed. For 3,000 years, we survived alone. We suffered alone. We grew stronger alone. She paused. We could have done the same to you. We could have watched your empire burn and called it justice. We could have become exactly what you are, conquerors who care only about power. But that's not who we chose to be. The Imperator's eyes narrowed. Pretty words. But words do not win wars. No, they don't. Jisoo nodded to Sunwoo. Which is why I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to every Veth soldier in this system. Every commander. Every pilot. Every slave who has ever dreamed of freedom. The broadcast went wide. Across the entire Veth fleet, screens flickered to life. On troop ships and battle stations, in barracks and command centers, Veth soldiers stopped what they were doing and watched. Your Imperator rules through fear, Jisoo continued. He punishes failure with death. Not just your death, but the death of everyone you love. He has made you afraid to lose, so afraid that you cannot even imagine winning something different. She spread her hands. I'm offering you that something different. Surrender. Not because we'll destroy you if you don't. We might, but that's not why. Surrender because even you deserve the chance to choose what you become next. The Imperator slammed his fist against his throne. Enough. You think my soldiers will listen to a soft-skinned weakling? You think they will betray me for your pathetic mercy? I think they're tired, Jisoo said quietly. I think they've been fighting for 500 years, and they've forgotten what peace feels like. I think some of them want to go home, see their families, live lives that don't involve killing and dying for someone else's glory. She looked directly into the screen. I can't promise you victory. I can't promise you won't face consequences for what you've done. But I can promise you something the Imperator never will. I can promise you a chance. A real chance to be something more than soldiers. Something more than conquerors. The Imperator roared. Attack! Destroy them all! Kill every last one of these vermin! The Veth fleet moved. Hundreds of ships, thousands of fighters, all converging on the Alliance position. Captain Yoon Hajin's voice came over the communicator. Admiral, they're coming. All of them. I see them. Jisoo turned to her crew. All ships, engage. The Battle of the Throne World began. It was chaos. Ships exploding. Fighters swarming. Energy beams cutting through the darkness like deadly light. The Alliance was outnumbered, outgunned, fighting against an enemy that should have destroyed them in minutes. But the Alliance fought like people who had nothing left to lose. The Ridhani ships wove through enemy formations, their pilots flying with desperate skill. The Kess engineers had created weapons that cut through Veth armor like paper. The Marathi warriors boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand, their ancient blades singing through the air. And the humans led them all. Lieutenant Do-hyun commanded a strike team that hit the Veth command ship. They fought through corridors filled with enemy soldiers, taking losses but never stopping. When they reached the bridge, Do-hyun found himself face to face with a Veth commander who was twice his size. The commander laughed. Small human, you think you can defeat me? Do-hyun didn't answer. He just attacked. The fight was brutal. The commander was stronger, faster, more experienced. But Do-hyun had something the Veth didn't. He had 3,000 years of anger behind every punch. 3,000 years of being told his people weren't worth saving. 3,000 years of proving them wrong. When the commander finally fell, Do-hyun stood over him, breathing hard. We were supposed to be forgotten, he said. We were supposed to disappear. But here we are. And we're not going anywhere. On the surface of the throne world, Specialist Choi Mai-rae worked in a makeshift medical station. Alliance soldiers had landed and were fighting their way toward the palace. Casualties were heavy. She treated everyone who came through her doors, human and alien alike. A young Veth was brought in. He had been shot by his own side for trying to surrender. He was barely conscious, his compound eyes flickering. Why? He whispered. Why do you help me? Mai-rae thought about the Ridhani child she had comforted a year ago. She thought about Dr. Shin, treating wounded enemies without hesitation. She thought about everything humanity had chosen to be. Because you're hurt, she said simply. And I can help. That's reason enough. The Veth soldier stared at her for a long moment. Then something changed in his eyes. Something like wonder. The tide of the battle turned slowly. Not because of superior firepower or brilliant tactics, but because across the Veth fleet, soldiers began laying down their weapons. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But enough to create confusion. Enough to open gaps in the enemy formation. Enough to let the Alliance push forward when they should have been pushed back. Admiral, Jisoo watched from the bridge as report after report came in. Veth commanders surrendering. Veth ships standing down. Veth soldiers refusing to fight. The Imperator is retreating to his palace, Counselor Tala reported. His personal guard is still loyal, but his empire is crumbling around him. Then we finish this. Jisoo opened a channel to all Alliance forces. This is Admiral Park. The enemy is breaking. Push forward. Take the palace. End this war. Commander Taejin led the final assault. His forces stormed the palace gates, fighting through the Imperator's elite guard. It was the hardest fighting of the war. But Taejun had the Marathi at his side, and humans behind him, and the knowledge that this was the moment everything changed. They found the Imperator in his throne room. He was alone. His guards had fled or died. His empire was falling apart around him. "You have won nothing," he snarled at Taejun. "Another will rise. Another will conquer. This is the way of the galaxy." Taejun shook his head. "No, that was the way of the galaxy. We're changing it." The Imperator died with a blade in his heart. His empire died with him. 1 year later, the new compact was formed. Not like the old one. This was different. Every species had a voice. Every world had a vote. There were no forgotten ones. No abandoned peoples. Admiral Park Jisoo was offered a seat at the head of the council. She refused. "We don't want to lead you," she said. "We just wanted you to remember. No one deserves to be forgotten." She returned to Earth with what remained of her fleet. She had lost many ships, many soldiers, many friends, but she had gained something far greater. She had proven that humanity was more than its worst moments, more than its violence, more than its fear. They were capable of choice, and they had chosen well. Years passed. The galaxy slowly healed. The Veth, those who had surrendered, were given a chance to rebuild. Some took it. Others returned to violence and had to be stopped. But the cycle of endless conquest was broken. On a small planet in the former Rithani territory, a school was built. It taught children from a dozen different species. They learned history, science, art, and the story of how the galaxy almost destroyed itself. A young Rithani woman taught the history class. She had been a child when the humans first came. She remembered hiding under a broken console while her world burned. She remembered a human woman who held her hand and told her she wasn't alone. Now she stood before a classroom of mixed species children and told them the story. 3,000 years ago, she said, there was a small blue planet called Earth. The people there were different from us. Some thought they were dangerous. Some thought they weren't worth saving. So the galaxy locked them away and forgot about them. The children listened in silence. But the humans didn't forget. They didn't give up. They survived alone for 3,000 years. And when they finally broke free, they found a galaxy in flames. A galaxy that had abandoned them. A galaxy that didn't deserve their help. She smiled. They helped anyway. Not for revenge. Not for power. But because they remembered what it felt like to be alone. And they didn't want anyone else to feel that way. She looked out the window at the stars. They forgot Earth. Earth chose to remember everyone else. The children sat in thoughtful silence. Then, one of them, a small Veth boy whose parents had surrendered during the war, raised his hand. "Teacher, do you think we can be like them? Can we choose to be good?" The teacher knelt down to look into his compound eyes. "That's the most important thing the humans taught us," she said. "It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter what your parents did or what your people were known for. What matters is what you choose to do next." She stood up and wrote something on the board. A simple sentence in every language spoken in the galaxy. "We remember." And they did. Forever.